Gabriel Mugabe. It's a name that defined Zimbabwe for decades. Mugabe was born in the Zvimba district of colonial Rhodesia in 1924. He was the son of a carpenter. The young Mugabe attends a missionary school, proving both smart and sensitive. He goes on to teach at training college before heading to colonial South Africa. He enrolls at the University of Fort Hare, a hotbed for black political discussion across British colonial Africa. Mugabe meets Kenneth Kaunda and Julius Nyerere. Kaunda goes on to lead Zambia. Nyerere emerges as the father of Tanzanian democracy after it gains independence. Mugabe heads to Ghana in the late 1950s. He teaches at a secondary school, falling in love with Sally Hayfon, a colleague's daughter. They're engaged to be married when he returns home. That trip marks a turning point. Mugabe finds Rhodesia in the grips of colonial oppression. Ian Smith's white supremacist government is firmly in control. Just like apartheid South Africa, the black majority is disenfranchised. He joins ZAPU, a new party created by trade union leader Joshua Nkomo.
We are non-racialist in our approach. That is, we regard as an individual as an individual, and that everybody must be accorded his full political rights, whether he be white or black, educated or uneducated, rich or poor. And this is exactly why we are at the moment struggling to earn for our people one man, one vote.
Less than 2 years later, Mugabe breaks away, forming the Zimbabwe African National Union, or ZANU. The move sparks panic in government circles. The regime bans the party in 1964. Mugabe will spend the next decade in prison. But then Smith makes a surprising decision. Mugabe is allowed to attend a conference in Zambia. He's ordered to return. But he has other ideas, escaping across the border to Portuguese Mozambique. Mugabe continues the struggle as guerrilla forces wage a brutal bush war. By 1979, the game is up. Smith agrees to elections, signing the Lancaster House Agreement in December. Mugabe becomes Prime Minister just 4 months later. He is hailed as a hero, a man of the people, for the people. Not just in Zimbabwe, but across the continent. But soon, his government is in turmoil. Joshua Nkomo is accused of plotting to overthrow his former ally. State forces take swift action, killing thousands of isiNdebele speakers in the country's south. The area is an Nkomo stronghold. The attacks will become known as the Matabele land massacres. It's a blight on Mugabe's record. But he also makes rapid gains. Zimbabwe offers free healthcare for the poor. It scraps primary school fees, securing one of the highest literacy rates in the world. The University of Zimbabwe becomes a hub of learning. Mugabe's first wife dies in 1992. But the country is thriving, and so is he. Mugabe marries 4 years later, tying the knot with his secretary, Grace Marufu. They go on to have 3 children. Those children grow up in a turbulent time. Zimbabwe still bears the scars of colonial conquest. And by 1999, white farmers own more than 27 million acres of land. Mugabe backs a wave of land invasions, some of them turn violent. The West responds, slapping the government with sanctions.
We don't mind having and bearing sanctions banning us from Europe. We are not Europeans. We have not asked for any inch of Europe or any square inch of that territory. So Blair, keep your England and let me keep my Zimbabwe.
But Mugabe's Zimbabwe is facing a crisis. Inflation rockets, soaring to 1,000% in 2006. Meanwhile, a rival party is making gains. The Movement for Democratic Change calls for a new Zimbabwe. But it pays a heavy price, with several opposition leaders coming under attack. The message is clear: support the president, or else.
And as has been said, I've been asked to speak on the...
April 2007, South Africa steps in. The SADC region appoints South African President Thabo Mbeki as mediator. He helps secure a deal, paving the way for elections the following year. The polls are supposed to settle the matter, but they do the opposite.
This is not merely a Morgan Tsvangirai signature. This is the signature for food, for jobs, and prosperity and justice for the people of Zimbabwe.
Morgan Tsvangirai wins the first round, delivering Mugabe's first and only electoral defeat. Tsvangirai is set to face his rival in a runoff. But the attacks continue. He pulls out, saying his supporters are in grave danger. The two leaders agree to share power in September 2008. Mugabe remains president.
I, Morgan Richard Tsvangirai.
Tsvangirai becomes prime minister. Zimbabwe makes some progress, replacing its currency with the US dollar. Hyperinflation is a thing of the past. But there's a jobs crisis, with 80% of the population unemployed. Mugabe wins more than 60% of the vote in 2013. But the poll is marred by controversy. The opposition saying it was rigged. The veteran leader faces another battle the following year, and this time it's close to home. Joyce Mujuru has served as his deputy for a decade, but she gets her marching orders, with officials claiming she tried to topple the president. Mugabe casts a long shadow across the 20th century. Not just in Zimbabwe, but for many who look to Harare in the hope of a better future.